In order to succeed, we must first lay out our parameters for success and failure. Now, that can be terrifying because it means that if you know by which metric you will measure success and failure, then it means that it is possible to find that you have been, are, or do fail, because you know what failure looks like. And then sometimes that's going to show up. And so it can be terrifying to define what that's going to be, because it might actually be easier to not really know what success and failure look like, and then you don't have to face it when you have failed. But by doing that, you also don't really know what to aim for and how to get toward your success. That is what we see happening this week. We see an opportunity this week with Mars and Mercury in Scorpio under a trine from Jupiter in Cancer, making also a trine to Saturn in Pisces. We see an opportunity to define the parameters of success and failure in order to improve our aim toward that goal. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Zamboni. I'm an astrologer and a musician, and if you want a reading like this one, you can go to zambonifunk.com. If you want to learn how to do astrology, you can go to zambonifunk.com. If you want to listen to some dope ass music, you can go to zambonifunk.com. Thank you for being here. Let's unpack some of this astrological imagery. Okay, so first things first here. Everybody is in a water sign that I mentioned so far. So we've got Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. Mercury and Mars are very good together in Scorpio, but they are a little bit brutal. They are so pointed and direct. So Mercury is our communicator planet. That's the one that's going to be associated with words, with reading and writing, with speaking and listening, with all of the trans stuff. So transportation, transaction, all of the like things that are sort of in the in-between space, that's our Mercury, right? In Scorpio, that's Mars's sign. That's Mars's sign of fixed water. We will come back to the fixed water component. Mars is also right here in Scorpio. And so the two of them are going to make a conjunction this week at 20 degrees of Scorpio, or it's maybe 18, 19, 20. Like they hang out together for a while. And in fact, these two are going to be hanging out for quite some time as Mercury moves past that Mars, because Mercury is the faster of the two planets. Then in a couple of weeks, we're going to see Mercury moving into Sagittarius, but then slowing down and stationing retrograde. And so then we're going to come back. And so we're going to see another Mercury-Mars conjunction later in Sagittarius. And so we've got a whole bunch of Mercury and Mars together for a while. And now is our opportunity to make the most out of that, because neither of them is as comfortable in Sagittarius as they are in Scorpio. Both of them are going to perform better in Scorpio than in Sagittarius. So we've got Mercury, who's our communicator planet, conjunct Mars, who is the action planet, the one who really cares about getting stuff done, pushing on things, getting hot and sweaty, and getting the work actually done in some kind of way. Athletes, warriors, these kind of things are associated with Mars, right? And so the thing about Mars is Mars needs an aim. Mars needs somewhere to go with all of this excess energy. If not, in the event that you don't have a thing to do with Mars, then things end up getting broken or destroyed. Mars makes a mess of things if you don't have an aim or a goal. I often think about the German Shepherd who is cooped up in your apartment while you're away and doesn't know what to do with himself, and so he just destroys furniture. But if you give that same dog a job herding sheep, for example, then both you and the dog are much happier. Mars is that dog. And so Mars in Scorpio is very powerful. This is Mars in his own sign, able to do the Mars things very effectively from this position. This is a fixed water sign. So when we think about fixed water, then we can think about water that is fixed in its course. So I often think of pipes this way. I think of rivers, creeks, for example, this kind of thing. There's a rushing kind of component to that, right? And so there's something here about Mars is our warrior, that Mars is the one who wants to have an aim, right? And so Mercury and Mars together are going to be very good for defining or expressing, communicating in some kind of way, the aim of working towards success. Now, these two are both going to be empowered by a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. So Jupiter is the planet of joy, benevolence, abundance, luck, expansion, these kinds of things. Jupiter's job is to say yes to things. Jupiter is very powerful in Cancer. Jupiter is said to be exalted in that position. So that's so Jupiter doesn't rule Cancer, but rather is just chilling and able to do the thing so easy. The way that I think about exaltation is it's like when you're at your best friend's place and you can hang out and you can go in the fridge and get something to eat if you want to, and you can, but you don't have any of the responsibilities. You don't got to clean shit up. You don't have to take care of the place. You just have to be there and enjoy it, right? That's how Jupiter feels in Cancer. So Jupiter, whose job it is to grow things, to nourish, and to make things abundant, is very powerful there in Cancer and is in an overcoming trine to Jupiter, or to Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. That's one of the best positions that Mercury and Mars can possibly be in, is underneath this trine from Jupiter. So this looks like success is very possible when you can express your aim, right? Mercury and Mars are very able to, like, Jupiter is saying all the yes to that, right? So there's victory available here for these two. But we can also see that there is a grand trine. So it's not just a trine to Jupiter in Cancer, but also a trine to Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is the planet of boundaries, of parameters, of borders, of discipline, maturity. All of these kinds of things are associated with Saturn, the slow planet. Saturn also in Pisces is making this trine to Jupiter, and Pisces is a Jupiter sign, so that's with reception. This means that Saturn is going to be very capable of doing the Saturn things, even though Saturn isn't particularly comfortable in Pisces. Having that trine to Jupiter, Jupiter is really making sure that everybody is on track to succeed. You can get the very best out of all of these planets by empowering that Jupiter, who is also associated with teaching and wisdom and that sort of thing, right? So there's something here about seeing the big picture that really empowers Mercury, Mars in Scorpio and Saturn in Pisces. So Mercury and Mars in Scorpio has that fixed water sign situation, right? So there's it is inside the pipe, or where, like, the rushing, the energy that comes from the rushing river or whatever it is made that way because it is concentrated by the parameters of the riverbanks or the pipe itself or something like that, right? And so we can really get into that if we think about Saturn, the planet of boundaries, offering a capacity for bounding the water in some kind of way. So water can be thought of as like emotional creativity or connections or these kinds of things, right? And so that's part of what I was saying before about how terrifying it can be to directly confront the thing that might actually look like failure. It might be that up to this point you have been navigating failure, and that sometimes isn't fun to deal with. It's hard to look at that. Sometimes, the feeling of it can sometimes be so overwhelming that it leads to paralysis. Paralysis, especially when you've got all of this Mars going on, leads to heart problems and shit like that. So the move here is to work out what success and failure actually looks like, and to communicate that appropriately to all of the parties involved. So maybe this is a you thing. Maybe this is all about like you competing with your own self and trying to improve your situation. Or maybe you're working in a team together with others, and maybe you don't necessarily, maybe everybody's not necessarily on the same page about what success and failure would look like, what that would feel like, what kind of aims we actually have here. So what we can see is that this week, by zooming out and taking a look at that big picture, what actually is the whole landscape going on here. We're thinking about Jupiter in Cancer this way. And in, Jupiter in Cancer, that is a nourishing and gardening kind of placement. It's the kind of thing that Cancer really likes to, like the nursery is associated with Cancer, right? Like you take the little babies and you give them a special place so that they can live. The thing about that is what conditions make the babies live their best. And so if we look at the wide parameter, or the wide view of things, we can be like, okay, what kind of structures can we implement in order that the little babies might make it past seedlings and turn into something that is large and thriving?